will introduce Jill Stein, the Green Party's candidate for President of the United States.
Thank you to Sue and to Donna. Can I just give them an extra big thank you for refusing to stand by while our health and our health care is being destroyed, which it is. And I think it's this spirit of grassroots defiance that really is the hope that we are going to change things. Let me say a couple things about how I come to be here. My background is actually as a medical doctor, and as a mother and a medical doctor, I found myself looking at whole new epidemics as I emerged from medical school. And I became involved with actually Physicians for Social Responsibility at that point. And we took a look at what some of the drivers are in these new epidemics. And we found those drivers in our food system. This is not rocket science. Our food system, the pollution that we breathe that actually kills 7 million people a year globally, it's astounding. We don't notice because it's supposed to be like a part of nature, but it's not God-given. We don't have to have that pollution. And also our transportation system that locks us into that pollution and also locks us into inactivity and to sort of a couch potato form of transportation, as well as all the chemical exposures. Anyhow, I began to work my way up the food chain, so to speak, from being a doc in the clinic to being a doc working to change policy. And likewise, I became an activist for single payer in Massachusetts at that time. We ran a referendum. I don't know if you remember this, but under the leadership of PNHP and Steffi Wohlhandler and David Himmelstein, we ran the Massachusetts single-payer referendum. And we were running well ahead in the polls. And what happened? The insurance industry kicked in with all their big bucks and their lobbying power. And of course, we couldn't pass this through the legislature because their doors were barred. Mind you, an overwhelmingly Democratic Party legislature. And we were outspent. 30 to 1, 40 to 1, 50 to 1, something like that. And still only beaten back by 2 percentage points. It was a moral victory, and that victory was basically snatched from our hands by the power of the industry. This happened again, I think, after Obama's election, when healthcare reform was in the air, right? And Obama was running very friendly to single payer. He had been a very explicit supporter. Single payer was off the table, and instead we were supposed to mobilize around a very dumbed down public option, which was just going to be a little thing. It was going to miss out on the whole savings that is the real, power behind the system. You get rid of the middlemen, you get rid of the massive private insurance bureaucracy, and save us $400 billion every year. That's what a single payer system will save us. But suddenly it was public option, and then all the advocates were barred from the table. We weren't allowed to be there in the discussions, and boom, there went the public option. It was a classic case of bait and switch. And as Sue was pointing out, this has been going on for 100 years. Now, I think we're in a different moment because suddenly we can see history like we never have before. I think partly that's thanks to the internet. We can just go Google it and we can Wikipedia it. And I have to say for myself, that's been so profound in my political education, is to just see the history behind this stuff and to recognize that we keep repeating these patterns over and over again. And in many ways, the Affordable Care Act, it's sort of like, well, what we could get. And they wanted us to mobilize around it because it was what we could get. It was a less bad system than having nothing at all. To my mind, that's kind of what the lesser evil thing is about? It's about settling for something that really doesn't fix the problem. And for many elections, we're told we have to vote for the lesser evil because voting our values would actually be a great risk. But what happened? Let's look at the track record. If you just look at, for example, 2008 or 2012, where there were third-party candidates, and I was the Green Party candidate in 2012, many people said, no, I have to vote for the lesser evil. It's not my values, but that's way I'm not, quote, throwing away your vote. Well, a couple questions. What greater way to throw away your vote than to keep voting for a system that is throwing you under the bus?
Right.
Woo! Right.
And remember the words of Frederick Douglass, that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We have to bring that demand into the political dialogue. If it's not there as a political threat, it does not exist. It is disappeared. And if you look at the consequences of Obama's election, look honestly, we were told, well, we didn't want to vote for a third party because it would expand the war. Well, I think it's fair to say those wars are expanding to beat the band right now, cannot be stopped. This is Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Iran, where does it stop? Somalia, Yemen. This is like the mistakes of Iraq have been massively generalized. The point I'm trying to make here is that you need to look carefully at the PR, at the spin that tells you not to vote for yourself, not to vote for your values, not to vote for the things that really count. That means single-payer health care. If democracy counted, if democracy mattered, we would have Medicare for all right now. We deserve nothing less. Stop the flow of money to ISIS. We would stop the flow of militias across the borders of our allies who are supposed to be on our side, but who are conveniently allowing all this support to flow through ISIS. By bombing ISIS, we do more of what created ISIS. We need to revisit our foreign policy, go back to the drawing boards. We need a foreign policy based on human rights, international law, and diplomacy. We need to build on the success of the recent negotiations with Iran. We need a nuclear-free Middle East, not just a nuclear-free Iran. We need to disarm all of them, including Israel and Pakistan. We need to abandon all nuclear weapons. We are violating the disarmament treaties by not moving ahead. There can be no non-proliferation without disarmament. So we have real solutions there within our region. I'm going to mention one other quickly. As Sue was saying, we have not only a healthcare crisis, we have an environmental crisis. I don't know if you heard the news last week, but Jim Hansen just put out the latest study. Hansen, who is the foremost climate scientist in the Western Hemisphere, certainly, and arguably in the world. His study now says, folks, it's happening in our lifetime. Get ready. Get ready for climate catastrophe. We are looking at a 10-foot and more sea level rise within the next 50 years. 10 feet or more. That means goodbye to all the major coastal cities, New York, the state of Florida, right here, yes, the ground we're standing on. So I guess my feeling here as a mother and as a healthcare provider is that we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to lead the way forward. We have been abandoned and betrayed by the political parties that are beholden to big money.
That's right.
We have to stand up like we're doing, being here today. Because when we put us together, 1 in every 2 Americans, according to the Census Bureau, is now in poverty or low income heading for poverty. 1 in 3 African Americans is held hostage by the police state and the prison system. 40 million millennials are in debt. We have a generation of debt with no escape. 75% of the jobs being created now under the NAFTA regime, soon under the TTP regime, if Obama has his way.
The TPP regime, repeat that. that.
The TPP regime. We need to stand up and stop that. Like Popular Resistance and Margaret and Kevin have been leading the way, and I want to give a good round of applause. Under that regime, our jobs are going overseas, and the jobs being created are the low-wage, benefit poor, insecure, part-time, and temporary jobs. This is not a future for millennials to pay back their debt and establish a future. The bottom line is we have a set of converging crises. We put them together, we've got all the numbers in the world that we need to fundamentally change this system, make it healthy, just, sustainable, and democratic. We deserve nothing less. Let's stand up for what we deserve.
Yes,
Thank you for leading the way.